So the story behind this bike is I acquired this from a deceased estate. The old guy who had it was going to do it up. I think he just bodged a lot of it. It was in a pretty bad state when I got it. So I've had it about 8 months. I spent a week just cleaning it and touching the paintwork up. Stripped all the carburetor down. I think I put new rings in it. And then by the end of the week, I had to shelve it because I had something else to do. So it's sat for the last 8 months, hasn't run. I also had to order a few parts for it. It's got a really bad engine leak. But I think it's just coming from this case. There was a whole load of bog. You can't really see it under there. But under here, all this section was all bogged up. So I smashed all the bog off, and there's no cracks or anything in the engine case. So I think someone just bodged it up because one of the gaskets had gone. So I bought a whole new gasket kit for it. So I'm gonna replace gaskets where I can without taking the engine off. I don't think it's the middle. I don't think I've got to split the engine. So that's where it is at the moment. I bought a new, because there was no original spark plug holder on this, because it's an older model. They don't use the coil and spark plug configuration. They have a separate coil up here, mainly because you can't get the fixed ones in with this frame part, because this is the older model. So I had trouble getting hold of one of those, so hence why nothing's really been done on this bike. Finally got one. I've got a gasket kit, so now we can start messing around with it and try and see if we can get it going. So that's the project for this week. It's not in too bad a condition now, but it was pretty rough when I first got it. I've got some photos which I'll post, and you'll be able to see what it looked like when I got it. But it took me a week to clean it. That's how bad it was. So it's looking half decent now, but it doesn't run. So that's the project for the week. So this is the bike when I first got it. It was in pretty rough shape, very rusty. The plastics had it. The fuel tank had a big crack in it. The actual saddle's pretty good, but it was in a pretty rough state. But I managed to sort a lot of it out quite a while ago, but then it just got shelved. So this is the reason I'm starting it again. So hopefully we get it finished this time. Okay, so as I've already started a lot of this bike about 8 months ago, I've forgotten what I've actually done. So I'm going to go through the whole lot again and change a few things and go from as if it's a brand new project. So first thing we're going to start with is the coil, because this is actually the wrong coil on there. So as you can see, it's only held on with one bolt. It's supposed to be two. So I've got a new coil to go on there. This one does actually spark, but it's the wrong one. So we put the right one on there, and at least we'll have some spark and the correct coil. Right. So that's coming off. Okay, something like that. I'll find some bolts for it. Cabling's a bit tight, a bit fiddly, but we're sort of getting there. Just hope this coil coil works, because I haven't tested it and I've only just got it in the post. So I'm going to be pretty pissed off if it doesn't work. Let's have a look. See if we can get some spark. Let's turn that off. Spark plug. We have spark. Let's see how we're going for compression. All the way up to only about 60 at the minute. I think that's about the best we're going to get. We are just about 95 pounds. I'm not entirely sure what this is supposed to be, so I'll have to check it. I've got a feeling it's around about that, but I'll have to check it because it's got a decompression lever built into it. I think it's quite low, but we'll double check. Okay, so the specs for this, it should be above 120. So we're at 95. So that's either bad piston rings, bad valves, or something else. So in case of getting the head off and checking it out, while I get the head off, I'll take the carburetor off again, give that a good check over. I did clean that last time I took it to pieces, but that was 8 months ago, so we'll give it another check over. But yeah, it looks like the compression's a bit low. It hasn't got automatic decompression. It's got a lever. I'm a dickhead. So that's why the compression is much higher, or should be much higher at 140. We also have an oil leak under here, but I'm not entirely sure where it's coming from. So the plan is to give this case a bit of a wipe over and then leave it overnight and try and suss out where it's dripping from, because there's nowhere obvious. I don't think it's the case. I think it's just coming from like the clutch side. I think there's a leak in one of the gaskets. But I've got all new gasket kit for it, so but we'll leave some paper under it tonight and try and suss out where it's coming from. That's the plan. Okay, so I've just put some oil down the cylinder, tried kicking it over again, and we got it up to 150. Now, I don't think there's any much oil in the engine, so I'm going to take the head off. I'm going to check all the valves. I might top it up with oil again, and then try and kick it again and take it from there. So I'll take this head off and we'll see what the valves are doing, see if they're within spec, because I'm beginning to doubt what I did with this bike 8 months ago. We'll have a look, see what's going on. inlet should be 0.1 to 1.5. So that one's clear. So they're clear on the inlet for 0.1. Let's see. So this is 0.15. Yeah, that clears. It's a bit tight. That one clears. So they're about right. So they're about there 1.5s, possibly 1.6. Let's see what the intake at exhaust are. They should be between 0.17 and 0.22. So that's 0.2. Yeah, they seem fine. That one probably about right, I suppose. So, gonna have a go, see if we can line this up a bit better and fiddle about with that. Okay, so what I'm going to do, the valves seem roughly about right, so I'm going to take this head off and check the piston rings, because I can't remember whether I changed them or whether I didn't. I can't seem to find the old ones, but I can't find the new ones either. So I'll take that off and we'll have a look and we'll check the rings and see what's going on. Right, so I'll undo the chain tensioner somehow. So we can get that undone. That is now loose. I might just have a, see if I can get that. Over one. See if that lines up a bit better. A bit of chain slightly worn as well. Right, okay. Let's whip this carb off. I'll leave that for now. I'll whip the carb off. So to do that, we've got to take this air box off. It must be 6mm. That's that. Exhaust has got to come off. surprised how much of this I did clean up when I was last messing about with it. I did clean a lot of it up because it was in pretty rough state. And then when I was waiting for parts, I thought, oh, I'll clean it up and give it a buff. And then it took ages for the parts to come in. So it sort of got a bit shelved, this bike, and shoved in the corner. We can take all the bits and we'll go through it all again. And we'll try and find out the problem with it. I don't know if it's anything serious. Actually, looks like one of the studs is missing from this as well. So there was a bolt in there. Right, that's that. I'll take the spark plug off so it doesn't get damaged. Right, carb can come off. Go up there. What that tang off of. Done, and then I might have to take the throttle cables off, which are a bit of a pain in the arse. I seem to remember. Okay. Let's put the camera around there. These throttles are a pain in the arse to get off. I think I did replace one of the throttle cables on this originally because it was all frayed. We got that one I might have had to adapt. That's why it was hard to get out. Come out. There we go. So one carb off. This set of Allen keys, I paid. You can buy these if you're in Australia. You can go in Repco and they do these. So you got metric and imperial, and they're absolutely brilliant. But you can find these in the bargain bucket in Repco. They cost $10. They're as cheap as chips, and they're absolutely brilliant. And because they're imperial and things, you don't get them all mixed up as well because you've got a holder for them. So highly recommend them, and they're so cheap. I've got a few sets of these, which I have laying around. One of my bargain tools were so useful. It's just useful having them all in a holder, all in one, because you can never find the one you're looking for, and they're just so useful. Right. when you take these off, on this side of the cam, there's some horrible little spring clips, and you have to be very careful you don't drop them down the engine generally when you're putting it back together. Because when you take these cams off, they can be a real, they flip off, which can be a bit of a pain. What I try and do is loosen all the bolts off and then try and leave the actual same bolts in position on the cam holders for when it goes back together. I think originally these edge mounts, I polished all theirs up. It was all painted and it looked a bit of a mess. So I got them on the old polisher and polished them up. They came out quite nice. All undone. I might take this off. It'll make life easier. It's got to come off anyway. Right, that makes life a bit easier. Right, let's get a box to put these in. Don't lose all bits. Keep it all together. That's a spring washer, which you have to be careful of. So that sort of clamps down on the cam. And you have to be careful with them; they don't fall down the engine when you're putting them on. Usually, what I do is stuff a bit of tissue down there when I'm sort of locating it all, just in case they do fall out, because they do. And that one has the same as well. That's the same ring. Get them all together in one box. Now I need a bit of string just to stop the chain dropping down. Okay, so that's the cams out. I've got them in a box, so I know what order they go back in. So let's whip that off. A bit loose, so then put that back on properly. There's a bolt in the head. Put that bolt back in there for now. Just put a cable tie around that spring, stop that flipping off. Don't lose that spring on that cable. Just put that on there, just to stop it falling off. I don't lose it. Keep that safe. Right, now it's a case of getting the head off. I'll have to look up the spec on these, because there's a weird way of putting these bolts back on. I think you have to like clamp them down to about 30 pounds and then you loosen them off. So about 22 or something like that, but I'll have to double check. I think it's this bike. But yeah, there's a weird way of doing them. Right, that's them. Take that oil line off.
In there as well. Right. There's some little washers in here as well. Yep.
Take that screw out. That's got a crush washer on. There's a crush washer that side as well, which is just fallen off. Go on there. Right, go in there. There. Let's have a look. That's the head off anyway. So that's pretty tidy. It's pretty clean from when I took it off last time, I think. But now we've got all the new valve guides. I think I'll change those. Double check all the valves while it's all off. Just so we can get it running nice. This head off, we need an 8mm spanner. Take that bit off. If these come out. That one does. I think that one's screwed in down the bottom. Right. one head, which looks in pretty decent condition. So, what I'll do now, just take the piston out and then we'll check the rings. Right. This piston has got the little circlip ones on, so I stuff that in there. That'll stop anything falling down there. Stuff a bit more in. I don't trust myself taking these things off. And then that piston should come out. Here we go. I'll circle it. Now, in theory, that piston should come out. Voila, one piston. I've cleaned the head up. Just checking the gap on the rings, and it's supposed to be 0.15 for the top ring, which is pretty spot on. So that seems all right. And then second ring should be 0.3, I think. Uh, 0.3 tolerance. Let's get them square. That looks square. Right, so that should be a little bit bigger. 0.15. So 0.3. So it should be, yeah, it's pretty spot on. My camera's a bit smudged. Yeah, 0.3, that's pretty spot on. So what I did notice were the rings were a little bit tight in the piston. So whether they were sticking a little bit, so I might just get a little bit of emery paper and clear the grooves out a bit. Whether they're a little bit gunked up. So give that a go. So giving this piston a complete clean, I think the actual new rings I put in was sticking a little bit, hence why it wasn't getting very good compression. So I've given everything a damn good clean. It was just a case of putting the rings back on, putting the head back on. Got a new gasket kit for the whole engine. So new gasket's gone on. So I'll put these, Try and get this oil ring in. I never seem to get these in. So I'll put the oil ring bit in first. And we'll put the ring over the top. There we go. That's that one. Right, that's it. Let's space these around a bit. Alright, second ring. That's his bar. It seems to be sticking before. So whether it was just a bit corroded, could it have been in there for a while? But it seems to be alright now. A touch wood. It should solve the compression problem. The writing on the rings goes to the top, and then you sort of space these out so the gaps are in different spots. Something like that. So those rings seem a lot freer now. So it could have just been a bit of corrosion in there where it's been sitting. But there was new rings anyway. And the ring gap seems good on them. So now I've got to get it back on the bike. Pistol going back on the bike. Tap. Right, just the piston back on. Just got to get the circlip in there. The fun part. Clip to go back in now. That went in. Yeah, that went in. That was easier than I thought. So the ring's nice and loose. Tissue out now, that tearing here. Gasket. Timing chain, we're going to leave the old one in there for the time being. Right, actual head, I've given that a good flush out, a good clean. Just got a little bit of oil on it. Just get a bit of a lube. then it's a case of getting these rings in, which is the fiddly bit. Oh, are we there? Are we there? No, we're not. We're close though. Always fiddly these ones when they haven't got studs to line up. That could be it. Here we go. Right, let's make sure his gasket's lined up. And we appear to be in. Right, we're there. I'll put that screw back in there, which should hold that in place. And the piston will be in. At the seams to be all lined up. So all good there.